Most people assume the first great human invention was fire, or the wheel, or maybe language. None of those come close. The oldest synthetic substance ever created by any human species was a black adhesive called birch tar, engineered by Neanderthals nearly 200,000 years ago, more than 100,000 years before modern humans made anything comparable. But the truly unsettling part is not how old it is. It's that modern experimental archaeologists, armed with full knowledge of what they're trying to make, have spent decades attempting to recreate this substance using only Stone Age methods. They consistently fail, and what those failures reveal about the minds that succeeded dismantles a core assumption about human intelligence. The assumption that we were the first to think in steps. What birch tar is and why it shouldn't exist. Birch tar is not something you can find. Birch trees do not exude visible sap, resin, or any sticky substance a forager might notice and think, I could use that. To make birch tar, you must take birch bark and heat it in an oxygen-restricted environment at a precise temperature between 350 and 400 degrees Celsius. Too cold and nothing happens. Too hot and the bark burns to ash. No oxygen restriction, and it simply combusts. There is no middle ground. This is not trial and error territory. The window for success is a 50-degree band, and the entire process is invisible. It happens underground or inside a sealed container, where you cannot see what's working and what isn't. The earliest evidence was unearthed at Campitello quarry in Italy. 2 stone flakes with birch tar residue dated to roughly 200,000 years before present Middle Paleolithic Neanderthal territory. The tar was used for hafting, attaching stone points to wooden shafts. It turned a sharp rock into a spear. It was, in a very literal sense, the glue that held their hunting technology together. Now here's where it gets strange. In 2019, a team led by Patrick Schmidt at the University of Tübingen published findings that shook the archaeological world. They demonstrated that birch tar could in theory be produced accidentally. Simply burning birch bark near smooth stones caused tar to condense on the stone surfaces. You could scrape it off and use it. No engineering required. No underground distillation. No temperature control. The implication was explosive. If birch tar could be an accident, then its presence at Neanderthal sites proved nothing about their cognitive ability. The entire narrative that this substance demonstrated forward planning, multi-step reasoning, abstraction, collapsed. Maybe Neanderthals just got lucky near a campfire, but none of this makes sense if you look at the actual chemical evidence. The Königsaue chemical proof. In May 2023, Schmidt, the same researcher, published a follow-up study that inverted his own earlier controversy. His team conducted a comparative chemical analysis of the 2 surviving birch tar artifacts from Königsaue, Germany. These 2 pieces, weighing just 1.35 grams and 0.83 grams, smaller than a fingernail, were recovered from a lakeshore camp occupied by Neanderthals between 45,000 and 80,000 years ago. Schmidt's team recreated 5 different Stone Age tar production methods, 2 above ground, 3 below ground, and analyzed the chemical signatures of each. Then they compared those signatures to the Königsaue artifacts using infrared spectroscopy, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and microcomputed tomography. The results were unambiguous. The Königsaue tar matched the below-ground, oxygen-restricted distillation method. It did not match any above-ground or accidental production pathway. The distinction was visible in the chemistry. Above-ground tar contains markers from soot and open-air combustion. The Königsaue samples had none of these. Instead, they carried the chemical fingerprint of an intentionally created underground environment, one that restricted oxygen flow and remained invisible during the entire process. Why modern scientists can't replicate it? Here's the counterintuitive detail that separates this content from everything else. The temperature window for birch tar formation, 350 to 400 degrees Celsius, is absurdly narrow. Without thermometers, without any measurement system, without being able to see the material as it transformed. Experimental archaeologists have tried for decades to replicate this consistently using only Stone Age tools and materials, The failure rate is punishing. Most attempts produce either charcoal or nothing. The energy loss in underground processes is enormous. Much of the heat dissipates into the surrounding soil. You need to maintain a specific temperature range, underground without visibility, using only wood fuel whose heat output varies constantly. And then there's the raw material problem that almost nobody discusses. Birch bark must be harvested at the right season, in the right condition, and processed before it dries out. The bark contains betulin and other compounds that only convert to usable tar under specific thermal conditions. Every variable must be controlled. Every variable is invisible during production. This is not accidental technology. This is not trial and error. This is an engineered process developed iteratively, what Schmidt's team calls cumulative cultural evolution, passed down across generations, refined, taught. It required abstract reasoning about invisible transformations, forward planning for a substance that did not exist until you created it, and the transmission of knowledge that could not be demonstrated while it was happening. The consequence? What happened to those who couldn't do this? Pull all of this together, and a picture emerges. Neanderthals who could haft stone points to wooden shafts hunted differently than those who couldn't. A hafted spear extends your reach. It concentrates force into a smaller point. It turns a thrown rock into a weapon that penetrates deep enough to kill large game horses, bison, mammoths. Populations without this technology were restricted to scavenging or hunting small prey. In an Ice Age environment where calories determined survival through winter, that difference was not marginal. It was catastrophic. The archaeological record bears this out. Sites with evidence of hafted tools show a wider range of prey species, higher nutritional yield per kill, and crucially longer continuous occupation. The adhesive was not a convenience. It was an edge that compounded across generations. Groups that couldn't produce it for whatever reason either moved, adapted, or disappeared. The most important technology was not a tool. It was a network, the social transmission system that allowed one group's discovery to become another group's inheritance. Here is what changes when you accept the Königsaue evidence. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, developed comparable synthetic material technology roughly 70,000 years ago in Africa. The Neanderthal birch tar at Campitello predates that by at least 130,000 years. That gap is longer than the entire history of human civilization from Sumer to the present day. The intelligence we assumed was uniquely ours, the ability to plan steps you cannot see, to transform one substance into another that doesn't exist in nature, to teach that process across generations, was already fully operational in a species we spent centuries dismissing as primitive brutes. They didn't have our language. They didn't have our art, at least not the way we do. But they had something we assumed was ours alone, the capacity for cumulative technological innovation. We inherited a system and abandoned the parts that made it work. They built it from nothing. What was the most surprising thing you learned? Drop it below. I read every comment. Subscribe now so you won't miss our next video.